In the shadows of the UK, where fog hangs heavy and secrets linger, evil finds fertile ground. I'm Ellie, and this is Ellie on Evil, a descent into the abyss of the human soul. I don't just recount crimes, I dissect the anatomy of malice, peeling back the layers of depravity that shroud the UK's most infamous killers and criminals. Each story is a chilling exploration of the darkness that dwells within, a stark reminder of the fragility of innocence. Prepare yourself for a journey into the heart of darkness, where the line between sanity and madness blurs, and the true cost of evil is laid bare. Welcome to Ellie on Evil, where we confront the demons that haunt our nightmares. The murders committed by Damien Bendall in 2021 represent one of the most harrowing cases of domestic violence in recent British history. Not only because of the number of victims, but because of the setting in which the crime unfolded. Unlike crimes carried out by strangers or in public spaces, this act took place within a home, a space typically associated with safety, familiarity, and protection. The victims, including Terry Harris and 3 young children, were not merely targets, but individuals bound to Damien Bendall through intimate and familial proximity. This proximity transforms the psychological nature of the crime, shifting it from mere predatory violence towards something more personal, more volatile, and deeply rooted in interpersonal dynamics. On September 18th, 2021, Bendall carried out a sustained and brutal attack inside the residence. The violence was not momentary or impulsive in a narrow sense. It unfolded over a period of time and involved multiple victims in quick succession. This type of event is often described in forensic psychology as a domestic mass killing, a category distinct from other forms of homicide because it typically arises from a convergence of emotional instability, perceived grievances, and situational triggers within a confined relational environment. One of the most significant psychological elements in this case is overkill, the use of excessive and repeated violence far beyond what would be necessary to cause death. Overkill is often interpreted as an indicator of intense emotional arousal, such as rage, resentment, or loss of control. However, it can also coexist with elements of awareness and direction. In Bendall's case, the repeated nature of the attacks suggests not only emotional escalation, but also a continuation of intent across multiple victims. This duality, rage combined with persistence, points to a complex psychological state in which emotional dysregulation and violent cognition intersect. A central factor frequently discussed in analyses of Bendall is his mental state at the time of the offence. Reports indicated that he was experiencing a psychotic episode involving hallucinations and paranoid delusions. Psychosis significantly alters perception, often distorting reality to the point where individuals may interpret ordinary situations as threatening or hostile. In such a state, actions that appear incomprehensible from the outside may feel internally justified or even necessary to the individual experiencing them. However, the presence of psychosis does not eliminate all elements of agency or structure. One of the most debated aspects of this case is the extent to which Bendall retained awareness of his actions. Psychologically, this raises the question of diminished responsibility, whether his mental condition impaired his ability to fully understand or even control his behaviour. The legal system ultimately concluded that, while he was mentally unwell, he still bore responsibility for his actions, highlighting the difficulty of drawing clear boundaries between illness and accountability. Another key dimension is the domestic context of the crime. Unlike predatory offenders who seek out unknown victims, Bendall's actions were directed at individuals within his immediate environment. This suggests a breakdown not only in emotional regulation, but also in relational perception. In extreme cases, individuals in psychotic states may reinterpret familiar people as threats or enemies, leading to violence against those closest to them. This phenomenon underscores how mental illness can distort not just thoughts, but entire social realities. The killing of children in this case adds an additional layer of psychological complexity. In most circumstances, strong social and biological instincts act as barriers against harming children. When such acts occur, they often indicate either profound emotional disturbance, severe cognitive distortion, or both. In Bendall's case, the combination of psychosis and escalating violence appears to have overridden these inhibitory mechanisms, resulting in actions that are particularly difficult for society to comprehend or contextualize. Public reaction to the case was marked by shock and horror, but also by a degree of confusion, not always present in other crimes. Unlike cases driven by clear motives, such as financial gain or calculated predation, this event resisted simple explanation. The involvement of severe mental illness led to a more complex narrative, one that forced the public to grapple with questions about how such extreme violence can emerge from psychological breakdown, rather than deliberate malice alone. From a psychological standpoint, Bendall's actions can be examined through several intersecting factors, being acute psychosis, leading to distorted perception of reality, emotional dysregulation, resulting in uncontrolled escalation of violence, situational confinement, where all victims were within immediate reach, and persistence of action, indicating continuation beyond initial impulse. All these elements together create a profile that differs significantly from organised or predatory offenders. Instead of calculated manipulation or long-term planning, the behaviour exhibited by Bendall reflects a collapse of internal control systems combined with altered perception. In the aftermath of the case, discussions have often focused on the role of mental health intervention and whether earlier recognition of symptoms could have prevented the tragedy. This introduces the concept of missed intervention opportunities, a recurring issue in cases involving severe mental illness. Warning signs such as behavioural changes, expressions of paranoia, or emotional instability may be present, but not adequately addressed due to stigma, lack of resources, or failure to recognise their severity. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge that most individuals experiencing psychosis do not commit violent acts. This case represents an extremely rare outcome shaped by a specific convergence of factors. Overgeneralizing from such events can contribute to harmful misconceptions about mental illness. The question of how to describe Bendall himself also reflects a broader psychological tension. The instinct may be to label him as purely monstrous, and that is understandable given the scale of his crime. Such labels, however, can obscure the underlying mechanisms that lead to it. In this case, the interplay between mental illness and violent behaviour is central. Understanding this interplay does not diminish the severity of the crime, but it does provide a more accurate framework for examining how and why it occurred. Ultimately, the case of Damien Bendall reveals a different dimension of extreme violence, one rooted not in calculated predation or the abuse of authority, but in the catastrophic breakdown of the mind within a domestic setting. It highlights how quickly ordinary environments can become sites of unimaginable harm when psychological stability collapses. The tragedy lies not only in the loss of life, but in the unsettling realization that such events can arise from a convergence of internal and external factors that are difficult to predict and even harder to prevent. The case endures as a stark reminder of the importance of mental health awareness, early intervention, and the need to understand violence not as a single phenomenon, but as a spectrum with multiple psychological pathways. The echoes of evil linger long after the story's end. In Ellie on Evil, we've dared to confront the darkness that festers within the human heart, peering into the abyss where morality fades and nightmares take hold. But the shadows we've encountered tonight are not confined to the past. They serve as a chilling reminder of the potential for evil that lurks within us all. A constant battle against the darkness that threatens to consume us. As we bid farewell, remember the lessons learned, the horrors witnessed, and the fragile line that separates us from the monsters we fear. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay wary, and never forget the darkness that we have uncovered in Ellie on Evil.